Welcome, everybody, to the Chesterfield Counseling Associates podcast slash video podcast. I'm here with my friend, Allie McWilliams. My name is Sonja Meyrer, by the way, and we've just been having a very important conversation about lighting and glasses and, yes, having to do things on video as opposed to having to do them on audio. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. Allie and I tried this podcast about a half a year ago, and there were technical difficulties, and it's really a shame because it was really good. We have a lot of fun together. We have a lot of insight. So we're trying this again, a little more high tech. I have one of these fancy microphones here, and you have one too. So let's see how this goes. But I'm going to let her introduce herself. I'm going to then do the same, and we
Mm.
want to have a very frank conversation about something that we both do as coaches, and that is encouraging our clients to be introspective and then talk about a specific tool that we both like to use, and that is the Enneagram. So, Allie, what does the watching and listening world need to know about you?
Mhm. I'm a creator of communities, a developer of souls, and a seeker and speaker of truth. And I do that through private personal fitness training for women, spiritual growth coaching, and personal development coaching. And so those can be all individual, and then they can all be one. So it's grown from being just in the fitness world and working on the outside to I really want to develop your souls. I want your mind and your soul to be strong. The body's great, but man, if you don't work on, which is so perfect to our introspection, right? Is if you don't work on the mind and the heart part of it, whew, the outside really doesn't matter as much.
Wonderful. And Ellie and I have actually kind of shared clients on occasion where I
Mm,
might send someone to her, she might send someone to me. So in the world of coaching, there are a lot of different kinds of
mm,
coaching. My area of expertise is more in relationships and recovery. So people who come to me are often struggling. There might be someone in their life who's struggling with an addiction or a mental illness or just making them crazy. They might feel stuck in their family dynamic, or they just might feel stuck in general and want to move ahead. And so, all of those different components, our relationships, our physical, our health, our spiritual health. I love that that's a part of what you do is the spiritual coaching as well. All of those things tied together, and we know that. So
mhm.
I'm so pleased to have you on. The two, when you get two coaches in a room, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. So we're going to try to be mindful of the people listening. And let's talk a little bit about this idea of introspection, because I think both of us will often have an experience where someone will come and say, I want some help, I want some support, I'd like some coaching in a certain area. And we might start by saying, okay, let's take a look at what's going on inside. And that might feel a little bit strange, because, well, what does that mean? If I think about my physical health, I know I need to check out what's going on with my blood and my organs. And, if I have pain somewhere, but sometimes our internal world can feel like there's stuff happening up here, there's stuff happening here, it's in my stomach, and we don't always know what's going on. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, why would you say that it's important that people are introspective? And then we'll go on in a second to talk about what do we actually look at. So why is introspection important in your experience in coaching?
Oh, lots of reasons. Just actually your physical health is one of them. I think a lot of personally and professionally, when we don't look inwards to our heart, the matter of the heart, um, all of that can show up in our physical health. Like I'm a firm believer that emotions are stored in your body and in your nervous system. And if we don't look at them, they do come out in some way, shape, or form, whether out of our words or in our physical, just tons of physical health issues. And so just getting to the heart of the matter, which is seems to be the harder part. So um so the physical part, but just relationships too. That's a huge part of how you react to people. How do you talk to people? Your relationships with people has a lot to do with what's going on internally as well, let alone just your whole everything to me comes from your belief system, your whys. It's why are any of us doing what we're doing, whether it's the job or the person we're with, or why we're going to the gym, like just our belief systems. When we stop to learn what our belief systems are and why we're doing what we're doing, then you can start to figure out, wait a second, this is how I got here. I don't want to be here anymore. Or if I don't think about it, where am I going to go? There's so much to it. It's not for me with any of my clients, no matter what type of client, if you don't understand your belief systems, then you can't do any change in life at all. So that's that's how I see it. How about with you? What do you?
I echo that entirely. And I would add that I just think it's a shame when we don't know what's going on inside, in the same way that in our physical world, if we limp along in pain and are constantly masking or trying to make
Mm,
something that hurts us go away, we could be living a full life. We could be using that limb or that organ to its full potential if we would just kind of check out what's going on. And I see people who kind of force their way through life and they're in
mm,
kind of emotional pain. And so there's a lot of anger, or there's destroyed relationships, or there's just a lot of needless suffering,
mm,
when we could be looking at, well, where's that coming from? And I always say, if I have a client who says to me, well, this is just how I am, I always say, well, that's you choosing to stay that way. I hear you. You have permission to continue on your life. But if you don't like that about yourself, or if that's not helping you, then let's take a look under the hood and see
mhm,
what's going on, even if it's a little scary.
mm. And funny that you said scary. I was just talking to a friend about that yesterday. It was like, what are we? I know every personality type is different too, but it's like, what are we really afraid of? Like, what's the worst? Is it you're going to be sad? You're going to be angry? You're going to have fear? Like, what's the worst? Like relationship change? Like, what is the worst thing that can really happen? Why are we all afraid of? It's so much easier to work on the external, right? That's why people go to fitness professionals all the time. It's like everybody wants to look great on the outside. It's like, oh, can we spend just as much time on the inside? Because that's the harder work than I think than going to the gym and eating clean. It's what are we afraid of? Why is it so hard?
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because my next question was going to be, well, if we're trying to be introspective, what are we looking at? Because
Mm,
again, on the physical world, we're going to look at our blood, we're going to do an MRI, we're
mm,
going to do an X-ray, we're going to see what the status of things are. Well, how do we do that in our emotional, spiritual, mental world? And one of the things that we do is we actually try to connect with and understand our emotions. And for some of us, if we were not allowed to feel a certain way growing up, or if we were told this is what it looks like to be a man, or this is what it looks like to be a woman, and these are the feelings you're allowed to have, it can be a little scary. I've had adult people come into my workshop, and when we talk about emotions and we look at this wheel of emotions, I've seen them tear up because they have said to me, I never knew that what I was feeling was not just anger, but I felt humiliated or I felt ashamed. And when we can name our emotions, we sense this feeling of, oh, now I get it. Now I feel like
mm.
it makes sense to me. What do you think about that? And then what are some other things that we kind of look at when we're taking a look at our mental health and our emotional health?
I love your feelings wheel because, dude, I thought there was four emotions. Like I thought that's all, kind of living the life that we've lived. It's like there was like four. I am like, what? There's all these emotions. And like you said, it's like my household, we weren't allowed very many of them. So then when you aren't allowed them, then you think there's something wrong with them. So I love your emotions wheel. I have to use it on myself all the time. Like it's such a great tool that you use. So
Well, and I want
um
to pause there for 1 second, Allie. Not that, so I don't want anybody listening to think that I created that. I use it all the time, but you can just Google emotions wheel or feelings wheel, and you'll get inundated with them. And if you're listening, check it out. Talk to your family about it. Look at it together. So just want to qualify that I'm not the inventor of the feelings wheel, although I wish I was.
no, and that's great, right? Because it's a free act, it's free for everybody. And like even now that we're talking about feelings, it's like we could be really angry in my household, which I know a lot of people couldn't, but that anger, actually, there's a deeper root, right? That's the easy emotion, the more allowed emotion in society, for some, I guess. But, when you realize that there's more to it than that, like realizing that my anger growing up was way more sadness. So that's what, that's what's so great about it, is digging into what do you really feel. And now all these parents there's these great videos of parents talking to their little kids, and the kids are
Yeah.
talking about emotions, and
Yeah.
it's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing a much better job. So emotions are a big deal. We could do a whole podcast
Yes.
on doing that and practicing that. What else? You mentioned we have to kind of know what our beliefs are. So talk a
Mm.
little more about beliefs and values and how that is important in the work we do.
Yeah, I think getting what I've learned and what I believe personally and professionally is getting to our belief system. I think that's where it stems from. I believe it's like looking at a house. Your beliefs are in the basement. And if you have a bunch of garbage in that basement and you keep throwing more and more garbage in there, pretty soon the first floor and the second floor are going to start to stink. So if you, based on what you believe, that means then that affects your thoughts and your words and your actions. So if I believe that I'm unworthy and I'm not enough, I will walk that out in this world in lots of different ways and not very great ways. So getting to our belief systems, which I think come from a lot of our personality type and then also our upbringing, those two are the biggest ones I've seen personally and professionally. And so then getting back to, what do we believe about ourselves? Have we believed these lies that we have to be perfect, or we're not enough, or we're only what we achieve, or we can only be happy all the time? Like, there's so many belief systems that we've taken on just based on personality types and our upbringing that are lies, or they're they're not at all what God says about us. So to me, that's why our belief is like, wait, that's why God says take every thought captive and line it up with his word, because wait a second, this isn't true or kind or loving. So I think belief is, behavior change doesn't work. We should know that by now. I
Yeah.
mean, people try to change their behavior in anything. I don't care what it is, not just the fitness world. So we have to get to your belief system. What do you believe? Right? It's the 5 inches between your ears that are the most powerful. It's your stinking thinking. It's your trash talk. It's, if you don't focus on I remember someone talking about, like, it's, if you believe this, then you go out into the world and operate that way and see the world that way. And it's not even true.
Yeah.
So
I have several clients that I work with and have in the past who come because they're in a relationship with someone in their family and they feel overwhelmed and stuck. And one of the things I see over and over again is that they have at some point bought into this belief. It was taught to them. A lot of times it was taught to them sort of in a spiritual world, that they were taught that they are not allowed to say no, that saying no is somehow unkind, it's
mm,
unfaithful. We're supposed to honor people. We're supposed to turn the other, all of those things. And predicated on those beliefs, they let everybody walk on them all the time because they don't know. They've never stopped and evaluated that and thought, is that really true? Is it not just what's expected of me, but do I think that's true? And so when we can pause and say, well, is that really helpful? Is that really what was intended in whatever scripture you might be reading or whatever thought philosophy about life you have? Is that really true? And to stop and say, well, wait a minute, I have the right to say no. When we just give people permission to think about that, that can be just enlightening, can start a brand new trajectory as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good point, especially based on how you've been brought up in the faith. Yeah, some people just believe they're supposed to be a doormat, and it's like, oh, but that's not what Jesus said. Yeah. So it is interesting. Where did that come from? You know?
I will find also that parents, because of belief systems or
Mm,
expectations that they think
mm,
the world has of them, will sometimes, become people that they don't want to be. And they will start to act in ways that are really destructive to their family and to their children
mm,
because this fear that it's supposed to look a certain way. My kids are supposed to look, they're supposed to behave a certain way. Look at what social media, shows us. Look at my pastor's kids. They're all awesome. And so there's this fear, getting to our emotions,
Mm,
fear of not appearing to be what I'm supposed to be. And if we can get behind that a little bit, well, what's the story you're writing? And I love that in conjunction with our beliefs, because you're writing a story based on something you believe. And when we can pause and say, well, is that really true? Is that really what's happening? Is that really what you believe? Wow. Then we can really open up a lot.
yeah, I totally agree. It's just starting with the belief system. And like, who told you that? Where did that come from?
Yes.
Is it even true?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
And as an adult, have you asked yourself, is that what you believe? And that can be scary too, to recognize, I don't know, I never really questioned that. I let other people sort of dictate that for me.
Mhm. Yeah,
Any-
I really.
Anything else that you look at? I walk through things like values and expectations with my clients, because if they have an encounter with someone and they're angry and they just can't believe that this and this would happen, I like to pause and say, well, what did you think was going to happen? What was your expectation?
Mm,
And that was based on what? Oh, and this other person didn't meet that. So sometimes I like to kind of dig into our expectations.
mm.
Anything else that comes to mind that is a tool that you like to use to kind of help your clients look inside?
Yeah, I have a whole list. I actually have like 10 kind of different assessments that I do with
Okay.
people. Um, One of them, if you're a believer, I sitting and asking God, who does he say you are? So
Mm,
you get your identity from him and not from the world. Because not to be morbid, but everything you can lose externally, right? Like all of a sudden, I'm not a fitness life coach person, or I'm not someone's daughter or mom or wife, right? Like all the external stuff. But where really does your identity come from? So sitting and asking God, who does he say you are, I think is really important.
mm,
Um, and that's where I got the creator of communities, developer of souls, and seeker and speaker of truth, because that doesn't come from the external world. It comes from him. And then I think the Enneagram personality assessment, I've done lots of different personality assessments, but I think that the Enneagram has been one of the most life giving tools for friends, family, clients. It just is a deep look into your soul and how you see and respond to the world. We've talked about values. I think strengths, knowing your strengths is really important, that your God-given strengths, your spiritual gifts are really great.
yeah.
Um, and I think things like your learning style. Like I didn't realize that I was like a visual and then a kinesthetic. So going to school for graphic design and fitness stuff was easy for me. But growing up, I felt stupid because, we sat in rows and you had to just take notes and you had to read a book. And it's like, that's not how I learn. So all of a sudden I think it's so important to do these assessments, because then I don't know if you found it, but it's like I had more grace and for myself and more patience for myself. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be anybody else anymore. I just want to be me. And then you just start to take the space in this world that you're supposed to stay, the space you're supposed to have in this world, and not try to be like somebody else and not be too big or too small. And so it just helps you show up on purpose when you know who the heck you are.
One of the other assessments, or if you will, sort of thought processes that I love to walk clients through is, simple things like your love language. And, this is based on Gary Chapman's book from years ago. And he outlines 5 of them. Of course, there are more and they're more nuanced ones. But, when I have a couple, or if I have parents who are in front of me, and this has happened more often than not, that the one partner just cannot understand, why do you not get what I need?
Mm,
And we can pause and say, okay, hang on. What do you need? Well, I shouldn't have to talk about it. They should know, it's not the same thing if I have to ask for it, but hang on. Well, I want a hug when I get home. I want you to come to me. And then I want you to ask me how my day was. Oh, okay. So you want to have some, verbal connection. You're a physical touch person. Well, that other person is looking at them like, that's not at all what I want. I don't need your hugs and your words. I need you to come home and I need you to get the kids into their jammies, or I need you to do something, to show me that you love me. Or bring me a little gift that says you're thinking of me. And we can just completely miss each other. And I had a client say to me, yeah, but I'm not good at that. And I said, well, but you can learn. When you know this matters to your partner or to your family or to your child, you can then learn to love them better if you
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of knowledge. So love languages are awesome. I think that's really important. Do you know your love language? Will you share it with us?
Oh yeah, I'm totally physical touch and quality time. Like, my husband doesn't have to just, you can hug me and kiss me and you don't have to do any acts of service. I'm like, it doesn't take much, but it really, I love that you said that. I think the love language is great because very few of us marry someone with the same love language.
Yeah.
How
I
about you?
I was in a relationship. I'm like you. Both of those matter to me most, but I was in a relationship with someone for whom gifts was a big deal. I don't want gifts. It makes me feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not going to say categorically, but then I feel like, oh gosh, I have to do something for them. And did I miss it? And now gifts just are not my thing. And so to kind of be able to say, hey, all you really need to do is look me in the eye and ask me how my day was. That's it. It's not that hard. So helping people understand how they're wired
Yeah,
can
it's
matter a lot.
It's fun too, isn't it? Like when you learn your kids and you learn your friends, because then it's easier to love on people too. Like it's so easy when like my mother-in-law was total gifts. Well, then it's really fun
Yeah.
to buy Christmas gifts because she loved it. I mean, you could wrap a rock and she would
Yeah.
love it. Where
Yeah.
my mom, it's like it doesn't pay to get her. Like it's just so fun. Then you can love people well.
Yeah. We'll talk about the Enneagram in a second, but I think when we are aware of each other's wiring,
Mm,
and especially as a family, I'm glad you said that. I encourage people to have like a Sunday night dinner.
mm,
It doesn't have to be more than half an hour, but encourage your children to say, this is what makes me feel good. Mom, when you do this for me, when you make my bed or when you pick me up or when you buy me a Starbucks, that makes me feel good. Wow. And you can write those things down, and hey, sister, when you return my things clean or when you say nice things to me around your friends, that makes me feel good. We can all kind of learn that a little bit better.
yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, Allie, this idea that sometimes understanding our emotions and our wiring can be a little scary. And I
Mm.
want to address that because there are people for whom uncovering some things can be scary. What else do we sometimes uncover when we're being introspective that maybe, could use some other professional eyes, or where we might say, I think you might consider referring out. You might consider doing some work with a licensed therapist. Do you ever come across anything where you would say, okay, that's pretty deep. And I'd really like to suggest that you work more with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have had trauma, whether it's the little t or the big T, right? So from losing jobs or relationships ending to car accidents to sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. So I think especially I think our generation, I think it's getting better, but a lot of us pushed it down or shoved it to the side and never have really dealt with it. And so really uncovering like, oh yeah, I might have grown up in a really angry household. How did that affect me? Or I got spanked a lot. How did that, there's just all these things that you don't realize, especially based on your personality type, how that affected you. So I think that's why it's important to find some safe people and have your tribe
Yeah.
or a life coach or a spiritual growth coach or somebody where like Brene Brown always talks about that they just show up for you so you're seen and heard instead of one upped or poo-pooed or trying to fix you or pull you through it. Instead of, I don't think until we share our stories with people who are safe we can say like, yeah, that's not healthy or that's not right. Like it's all we've known growing up. And so all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's not good. You know, and then people start to realize like, really? Your household didn't live in fear and worry? And I'm like, no, my household did not live in fear and worry, but it lived in other things.
Yeah. Yes, I can nod my head vigorously to everything you just said. And when we find that there are certain things in our personality, or people call us out on certain things over and over again, um, it's an okay time to pause and say, where did that come from? I get clients often who say, well, there's no use blaming my family or blaming my parents. And I agree, there is no use in that. But good golly, there's a lot of use in understanding what happened to you, to use the phrase from Oprah's book, what happened to you when you were younger that created this belief or created this false narrative about you. And when we know that and we can process that well and get some help, we can move into the future without it. But inevitably, trauma, which, for the listener, can be anything. It can be whenever we feel, or our brain feels overwhelmed, when we feel like there's something that is happening to us or has happened that we were not able to manage, whether that's a tiny little thing that happened in our childhood or a big T trauma. It will leak at some point. Most often it doesn't always happen at the time. Sometimes we just pull ourselves together and we move forward, but there will be a time in our life often where that trauma will show up, and it's often with the next trauma or the next difficult situation. And so there's nothing to be lost by uncovering that kind of yuck. There's so much to be gained from processing through it and moving forward without it. Am I singing to the choir or preaching to the choir? I never know how that goes. Would you
You're
agree?
preaching, sister. Well, even I'm in my last year of perimenopause, and all the books I've read is like when your hormones change, all of a sudden the stuff you didn't heal from can start to come up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing self-awareness and healing work for 12 years, and things are bubbling up again. And it's because my hormones are changing. So it's like, oh, like this is uncomfortable again. But it's like you don't even realize it's there because it's been very deep for so long. And then, I think there's lots of layers to it for us. Just because we live in America, we've been able to numb out our pain so easily. It there's a list of 100 things you can do to numb out. And so I think we're really good at not looking at the heart and dealing with the pain of it. But like you said, it will come out somewhere somehow, and it's usually the people closest to you that it's going to also come out on.
And they'll let you know. They will let you know. And it behooves us all to listen to the people around us too, especially the ones we trust.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. I want to pivot slightly now, unless you have anything else to say up on the first part, because I really want to start talking about this mysterious Enneagram.
Now let's go.
When did you first learn? Do you remember about how long ago you were first introduced, and who introduced you to the Enneagram, if you remember?
I think it was in 2014, and my really good friend, who was a holistic nutritionist, who first introduced me to the Christian Coaching Institute that I got certified as a Christian life coach. She was the one that then is talked Enneagram stuff. So it was all a friend group first. And then, and I've done all these other assessments. And then I was slow to it, but then as I learned more and I started taking different classes or listening to different podcasts or reading books, then did it really start to just what? And then I use it with all of my clients. And I know before we get into this, it's like I know the symbol looks really freaky and it doesn't look like a Christian symbol. And I know people in the Christian world will poo-poo it. But like Tyler Zock has got a great, we can do a link to it in the show notes. And he talks about should Christians use it? And he dives way into it and it's really good. And he's got a self-typing guide too. So if this is new to you, but yeah, it was probably 2014 through a friend, and I haven't looked back and only kept going forward. How about with you?
Probably similar, probably around the same time, probably 8 to 10 years ago, a group of my friends. And it has been used by people of different faiths over the years, which I love too. And I think the reason I keep coming back to it is just that it works. It makes sense when you dig into it. And so whether you're going at it with the spiritual component, that my hope is to become more Christ-like, or to become healthier in the person, that I'm called to be, or whether it's really just coming in from the approach of, I want to know myself better and know the people around me so I can stay out of trouble. I've just really found it to work. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the whole background to it, because I think there's so much to say. So if you're interested, we'll put a resource or two in the notes of the show for you to learn more about it. But it's, when you think about some of your classic tools, the Myers-Briggs, DISC and all, and they're used in different places. They're used in the work environment. Some are used, for more personal and interpersonal. The Enneagram, what I love the most about it, and then I'll ask you the same question. And it's an assessment that is done over time. So it's not you can take tests, you can go online, and it can be helpful, but really you got to dig in just a little bit more to kind of figure out where you fit in. But there are basically 9 different types, if you will. Nothing is exclusive, so you have a little bit of each one of them in you, but you tend to kind of find yourself in one of 3 different quadrants. Either you're more of a head person, a little more cerebral, you're more of a gut person, you kind of respond to the world, kind of, pushing this way, or you're a heart person where you kind of feel things. And when you can kind of figure that out, you figure out your motivation, then this whole world opens up to you of understanding. What I love the most about the Enneagram is that it never tries to separate out sort of your DNA from your life experiences. What the Enneagram says is you are the combination of everything that's ever happened to you, the culmination, I should probably say, of everyone who's ever lived in your life, of all of your inherent traits. That's who you are. And that's who you are right now. And so we don't need to go back and say, well, that's because this person came into my life. Most of our personalities develop because of strategies that we use in our life to feel safe, to feel secure, to interact with people. And so wherever we are today, that's okay. That's a good place. We can celebrate. But what we have when we work with the Enneagram is the opportunity to grow and to become a healthier version of ourselves and to be aware of our unhealth. And that kind of dynamic tool to me is so much different than some of the other assessments where you're a this, and that's just kind of who you are. And the Enneagram, in fact, they say in the Enneagram, you're not a anything, even though we might use that. You are, this is your tendency. Here's where you can keep growing, and here's where you need to watch out. So I just said a whole bunch of stuff. Tell me about you and the Enneagram, what you love about it, and maybe how you kind of integrate it with your clients if you do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. And it is much deeper and richer, and it is way more of a soul journey, like you said. It's not just a one and done. There's so much depth to it. And people are like, oh, I don't want to be put in a box. I'm like, oh, you're already in a box and you already see the world a certain way. So
Yeah.
why don't we
Yeah.
I see it as like we all have glasses, right? And
Yes.
some could have a big feather on it. Some could have an elephant nose. Some has really fancy ones. Like we all see a certain way. And when you realize, oh my gosh, this is how I see the world. This is like a core desire and longing and fear and weakness. And it's because of my personality type. It gives me so much more awareness of myself and how I show up in the world versus our son or my husband. And so I use it with all my clients because it helps me coach them better and train them better because we're all motivated through that personality type as well. So it's so funny based on your personality type too, right? Like if you're a group fitness person versus just one-on-one training, like it all has to do with a lot of that. And so I love it with my clients because most of us haven't looked inward. And so it helps them slow down. And so when we talk about a situation in life, we can kind of go through, hey, this is where you are at your best. This is where you are at your worst. Tell me what comes up right now for you. And most of the time they go to one of their worst, like, oh my gosh, this is where I'm being super flattery. Like I'm
Yeah.
really possessive and I'm flattering people. And you know what I mean? Like they can just see in their, because we all have to get along with people. We all have to deal with people. And I'm loving that more and more businesses are doing personality
Yes.
assessments and
Yes.
personality fits instead of you can do the job. So what I love now is the IQ is not as important anymore as EQ, like your emotional quotient, like being emotionally mature and understanding how you come in and get along with people is far more important, in my opinion. So I think it's just really good so people can reflect on themselves. Um, oh my gosh, this is where I'm actually going. Hey, I'm showing up here in health, but this is where I'm still not a bad thing, but this is where I'm unhealthy and I can work towards being healthier. And also, I think it gives us like, oh, it's not all my parents' fault. When you look at some of the childhood wounding messages and some of the things that your heart longs to hear in your personality type, oh, it's part of my personality type that I saw this way, right? Like we see as we are, not as it is. And like now they're saying like 50% of your childhood, only 50% is accurate on how you viewed it, right? Because you have a childhood brain that saw a certain way and then your personality type, right? Like you have three kids, they probably have different personality types. You come
Oh,
together at Christmas, they see differently. And so it's like, oh, this is how I came into the world and see the world. And then who I'm around just magnified that even more. So,
yeah. Oh, it's just, it's amazing to me. I'll share and then you decide, Ellie, if you want to, but
mm,
I have kind of come to know that my Enneagram type is a 3. And 3s are very, very well known for what we call being chameleons. And what I mean by that is you can drop a 3 into the middle of any room, and that 3 will feel at home. And that 3 will make others feel at home too. So 3s are really good at sales and marketing and anything that involves public, interfacing with the public, because we know we're very in tune to the people around us. That is a gift, and it's also a curse, right? Because and these kind of tendencies came out of my childhood. In my childhood, in the home I grew up in, for better and for worse, I had to learn to navigate the adults around me. That was really important for my survival. Is what's going to happen when he walks in the door? What is she expecting? How do I make sure she's happy? How can I make sure that this person still loves me? That I had to work at it. So I learned how to come to and stay away and what to say and what not to say. It's a great skill, but it also doesn't always help me in understanding, what do I want? What's important to me? What do I need? Which is sort of foreign to a 3 who's not evolved, who hasn't done any work. So a lot of times we take our cues from everyone else around us. And if that doesn't go well, that's very wounding. And that can feel really insecure. So 3s are kind of the chameleon. And I have to learn to slow down, to dig into what's around me that I love, that makes me feel safe, that I care about, and let everybody else have their thoughts and opinions, and know that I'm not responsible for all of them and I can't fix and change all of them. And that's a life's journey. That's not going
mm.
to happen overnight. Any chance you want to share a little bit about where you fit in on the Enneagram?
Yeah, all of my friends thought I was a 3 as well,
Uh-huh.
like you, the achievers, right? Um, Mine is real. I'm a 2, but my 3 is really, really, really high. So I go between both of them. So when you were talking about a chameleon and fitting in with any group, yep, totally, that's me. But it's all about core motivations with the Enneagram. So
Yeah.
we can all be doing the same thing,
Yes.
but we all have a different motivation on why we're doing it. And so me being a 2 is helping everybody. I want everyone. I remember when people go, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" It's like, I just remember I just wanted everybody happy.
Yeah.
It's like if everyone could just be happy, because I didn't realize that if you're not happy, I can feel your feels. So when you aren't happy, I like feel you. And then if you're not happy with me, not only do I feel your unhappiness, but then I feel my unhappiness. And so it's like, oh, no wonder I wanted everyone just to be happy and get along. It's because I actually feel it viscerally in my body and I do not want to feel. And so Realizing that I'm a 2, I know what you're feeling. I know what you need without you asking. I know who just had a fight. Like my mother, my husband always laughed. I'm like, our my in-laws would come over for dinner and I'm like, hey, I'd be my husband. Did you notice that your parents were just probably fighting before they came over? And he was like super unaware of any of it, because I can feel it and see it. And
Yeah.
but if you ask me, how am I feeling and what do I need? Oh, yeah, I have no idea. And so that's why being a chameleon too, right? Like I kind of being a 2, I'll just do what you're doing. I feel what you feel, but then all of a sudden, wait, are those really my feelings? I mean, they might be yours, they're not mine. So yeah, they are, it's been really interesting to like, oh, and I don't have to help everybody. And it's been really good to just stop
Yeah.
and learn on, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this mine to help?
Yeah.
So,
I'll give you a professional example that just happened recently that I just so love. And that is I have a client, and she is dealing with someone who struggles with substance abuse, but the root of it is that there's just a lot of, this person who's struggling, has a lot of fear, has a lot of pressure from their family, struggles to say no, and so on.
mm,
And so she just can't understand why he's wired that way. And she said to me, if somebody isn't nice to you, to me, I cut them out. I'm done. I'm over. I move on. It's not worth it. And I keep telling him to not do that. And I had to laugh and say, so how's that working? Well, he just won't. He just won't. And I looked at him and I said, or looked at her and I said, because he's not you. And to really help people recognize the glasses that someone else is looking at the world with are not the same as yours. And so when you feel like you got to keep going at them and trying to fix them and change them and make them like you, it exasperates them, for one, and it doesn't get anywhere. It makes you frustrated. And so part of the Enneagram journey is learning to let other people be, because they are different. Now, that doesn't mean we let people walk on us. It doesn't mean we don't try to help them. But the way we think people should go at things is not the same way. And you can hurt them more by trying to force yourself and your solutions on them if they're not wired or equipped that way.
yeah, yeah, because some of us, it's hard. We're relational people and we just can't, yeah, walking away is hard.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really like it. Like, I'm sure you do too, having 3 adult children. On the DISC assessment, my son and I have the same exact personality type. We're both very similar, exact same personality type. So it was driving me crazy when I'm like, dude, just get some stuff done. Like, why can't you get the things done that you're supposed to get done? Because I'm a very process oriented. This is what I have on my list. These are the top 3 things I need to do. I just do
Yeah.
it. I'm not a procrastinator. Well, then he did the Enneagram and he's a 9. And then it just made such sense. It's like, it's not that he's not busy doing stuff. Like he works in the film industry out in LA and it's like, he's supposed to get a reel done. That was last year. We're in August right now. Dude, like you're supposed to get your reel done of all your highlights of what you've done. What are you doing? Because, a 9, they have a sticky note of everything they need to do for the day, but they can't pick out what's the most important. So it's really helped my husband and I when we want to choke him out sometimes, like give him some patience and grace on, he just doesn't see the world and react like we do.
Yeah. And that's so helpful in a family. It's so helpful. I can tell, my kids can tell you stories because we did the Enneagram when they were younger. You really can't do it when they're 8, 9, or 10 years old. You might have an idea, but as they get a little older, to recognize that this one child, I got to come with the heart emojis. I got to come with the I love yous. That really matters. And the other
Mm,
child, just don't bring up conflict. And if you're going to bring it up, there's got to be a certain song and dance and way. The other child's like, just get to it. Why are we so you just knowing. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to spend hours and hours accommodating everyone, but if our goal is to
mm,
be loving and kind and communicate and get through, it behooves us to know. And like you said, a lot of companies now are having their employees put their Enneagram number outside their door. So I have a lot of Enneagram 8s in my life, and Enneagram 8s are They're just the challengers. They go at the world. They do not understand why anybody has fear or is timid, because they came out of their childhood knowing that I've got to show up. They're super, super loyal, but they are really blunt and to the point. And if I walk into the office of an 8, I know, okay, take a deep breath. Don't take this personally. And it's okay to push back. If I walk into the office of a 9, I got to do the exact opposite, take some time, listen carefully, bring things up in a different way. But that's how it works. That's where the magic is.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like even my husband he's a great communicator, but he's a really, really healthy one. But I realized when I started training him, he was driving me crazy because he was asking me all these questions. And I was like, dude, just do the work. Like it made me feel
Yeah.
that he didn't know what I was doing. So
Yeah.
I felt like he was questioning me. He's like, I'm not questioning you. He needs so much information and time to process it. So I've learned to drop little things. Like when I want to tell him about something, I drop little things. So then, in 3 weeks, he thinks it's his own idea and then he comes to me with it. But to just learn, like, this is how he processes. He needs all this information. It's slower for him. Where if you give me something, I'm pretty much like, yep, let's go. So
Yeah.
it just really helps me communicate with him better and not take it personally.
Yeah. So I'm curious, if you are coaching someone and you want them to get to know the Enneagram, are there certain books, podcasts, resources? What is it that you use? Or what is it that you suggest to your clients? Because there's a lot out there on the Enneagram. Do you have some favorites?
I do. And there are a lot. So, if you're a faith-based person, there's great tools. If you're not a faith-based, it's out there for everybody. And I think you and I both love The Road Back to
Oh,
You.
wait, I happen to have it here too.
Like I think this was my first one. And what's great is you don't
Yeah.
have to read the book.
Yeah.
You can just once you figure out your number, or you could just read, they say, what is it like to be a 1? You could just go through and read all the pages of what it's like to be each number and highlight it. So I think The Road Back to You is a great place because it talks about healthy, unhealthy,
Yeah.
more healthy, what you were like as a child. Like it's just, and then 10 pathways to help you transform.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good one. I also listen and have taken a lot of courses by Suzanne Stabile.
She's one of the authors. So if you're looking at this,
Mm.
they both have their own podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And Stabile has a lot of classes.
Yeah. And she has Enneagram Journey by Suzanne
Yeah.
Stabile. So I've taken a lot of courses from her and listened to her podcast. And then Tyler Zock, I really like because he has a it's kind of a printout, a PDF, and you can go through and read through stuff too. So I know a lot of people like Suzanne believe in listening to your number, and a lot of people learn better by really listening. He's got this whole identifying PDF, but he also has this great, which this is for you, my little 3.
Oh dear.
He's got the gospel for each one. So what's great is it's like a little daily devotional, but then there's reflective questions. So it helps you with your identity and your personality type. So it's a you and a God thing. And he does a great job with that. And it's just that's been really good for people to really dig in. And then I also have the McCords, Beth and Jeff McCord, your
Mhm.
Enneagram coaches.
Yeah.
They have they have lots of different courses that are really inexpensive to take. And they have these cheat sheets that I use on all the numbers.
Mhm.
And so they kind of just go through and highlight on each number. So they just really help people better understand themselves. And then a lot of us, right, depending on who we are, we like to learn about everybody else, right? Like my number wants to learn about the other numbers to
Yeah.
help the other
Yes.
numbers.
So
So
so we can best get to know how to help them and serve them. Yes.
how about you? Who do you use?
I do like The Road Back to You, and I like it because there's also a podcast that goes along with it. It's not a current podcast, but when you listen to the whole series, they in the introduction they explain a little bit more about how
Mm.
to get to know your number, but then they do interviews with each of those numbers. And wow, there's nothing more powerful than hearing someone talk about you, and they explain your life, and you think, oh, that's exactly me, and that's what I do. And it's affirming, to feel like I'm not alone. There is no one number that's better than any other number. They're all just sort of, it's our different types, and it behooves us to take a little time. So that's the other thing I would say is there's a ton of quick and rapid online assessments. The Enneagram
Mm.
Institute has a lot of information. They'll tell you, you know, how does a 2 usually get along with a 3, or what about 2s and 8s in relationships? And that's great. But I would just say, you know, take some time. If you're going to do an assessment, also read and make sure that you know, you're kind of really buying into that. So awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Any last parting words about internal looking at ourselves or using tools like the Enneagram? Anything else you want to add for the common good, Allie?
I think also just sitting, since we talked about introspection, is just starting off, maybe if you don't have some people right away, or if you can afford a coach right away, like just starting to sit and journal. Or if you're not a
Yeah,
journaler, like
yeah.
I'm not a journaler, but I have like it's like a 5 minute, it's like a little book, and it gives you like 3 lines for each day of the year, and just reflect on how you think and feel. So just to maybe journal or
Mhm.
reflect or pray or meditate, or just something to stop. And I know it's hard when you're busy working and you have kids, and it's like, I didn't have any time to stop and reflect, but your heart has to be ready for it. So, but just making time to start to reflect on, how do you think? How do you feel? What do you, and those are Enneagram words, right? Too, that get you into, what are you thinking? What do you feel? What are you going to do?
Mhm.
So we're all delayed in one of those. It will help you move forward in life.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Well, this is wonderful. I hope we get to have conversations with the coaches often in the future. But if you are listening or watching, we will put links to those resources in the notes, and also links to how you can connect with Allie or with me. And we want to continue serving people and helping you on your journey. So if you have questions or you want to connect with us, please do that. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. It was so fun to connect with you again.
You too. Thank
Let's do it
you.
again.
I'd love to.
Okay. I'm going to push stop. Bye, Ellie.